Hey, okay, so today, this one, I want to talk about something a little bit different. And I want to talk about mental health and my own mental health a little bit. And I want to talk about that because I think it might give you guys an insight into why I know lots of things aren't just about willpower. And I think it's important because many of us will struggle and suffer with mental health, with things that feel so very wrong with us. And we're embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed to talk about it. It makes me slightly nervous to have this conversation right now, even though I'm sat on a balcony by myself. Because I know that by filming this, I'm committing to sharing it. And that's kind of scary because, you know, I've heard people say before, why would you share your struggles? Do you just want attention? That'll be something that goes through your head if you've had any of these issues. And maybe partly that's true. Maybe that is partially true. Maybe I do want some attention. Maybe I do want someone to come along and magically make things better for me. Maybe I want to stick two fingers up at it and go, fuck you. That's four fingers, but you get the idea. And that even though I'm ashamed of certain things, fuck you for taking more than that away from me, to myself, to my own brain. Maybe, who knows? It's hard to put a finger on exactly one thing because I'm likely justifying it from my own bias and what I think I'm doing it for versus what you think I'm doing it for. But maybe there's a lesson within that nuance is an important part of understanding mental health. It's an important part of being a coach, actually. It's an important part of you being a client. It's an important part of being a good fucking human being. So I want to talk about my own struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder. So if I go back a couple of years, I was at a point where I would spend most of my days in bed crying. I couldn't seem to get up. I'd frequently not get up till about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And not because at that point I suddenly had enough willpower, because fucking didn't. Okay, at that point felt like I could get out of bed, but before then I'd just feel pathetic and I wouldn't be able to get out. And this is maybe April, a couple of years ago, 2014, just before my birthday. So I got taken on my birthday, May the 8th. To give you a little bit of background, we went out, a group of us, about 20 odd people, of friends, family, clients, a group of people who cared about me, went out. It was the Friday after my birthday, Thursday was the Thursday, so it would have been the 9th. And I spent the entire time crying in a toilet. And just excusing myself and going off upstairs just because I wanted to be by myself, because being around people, I just couldn't deal with the constant effort and demand it required of me to put on a face, and to be okay in front of people, and to be more than okay, because I'm normally quite outgoing and I hope entertaining, and I also hope kind of fun to be around. And during that point, I really wasn't. That was the culmination of months that started really around the start of the year and had built. And it started with, I would, in the middle of client sessions, just excuse myself to, I just need a pee. And pee, I'd just go and hang out near the disabled toilet at work and crouch by the bin in there and cry. And I'd run the tap or run the hand dryer so people wouldn't hear the noises that would come out of my mouth that were somewhat akin to a birthing whale. Because I was embarrassed, and because, I was stood in front of a client, I was stood in front of people, and they were having conversations, and I was not there. I was elsewhere in my head, and I couldn't seem to escape it. And after, every half an hour, whatever, and it gets worse, I would want to just cry, and I just need to let that out. And I thought that was normal. I was in the midst of prep at the time for a photo shoot, and I was like, well, maybe I'm just, it was the first photo shoot I'd ever done. Maybe I was just run down. Maybe I just felt crap. Maybe this was prep, I didn't really think it was that, but, who knows? And I finished that prep in April, and so we roll on a few weeks, and then it is that birthday thing. And so that Friday evening, went back to where I live and had a lady and friends and people I really care about were around me, and I was just in the fetal position crying in my room. And I remember my friend Sarah sort of cradling me. And the next day I got taken to my doctor by these guys because clearly something wasn't quite right. And God, I remember sitting in that waiting room, waiting for the first time you go and see a doctor to say there's something wrong with you. And you're sitting like, what the fuck do I say? I mean, like, how do I start this conversation? I'm sorry, doctors. My brain's kind of fucked up. I keep crying, and I sort of don't know that I want to live anymore. Could you fix me? And, you know, your heart's going, and you feel, like, how the fuck do you start that conversation with someone you've never met? I haven't told this to people close to me, fucking let alone this guy. I don't even know what it is. Surely I'm okay. I just need to fix, and I don't know what it is. And so I sit down, and this has been going through my head for a while, and I just kind of went bleh, right at the doc. I was like, I've got and I don't even remember what I said, but at the end of it, I came out with a diagnosis of depression, which is a big like umbrella statement, and a prescription for citalopram to begin with. 10 milligrams, and then would go up to 20 milligrams per day. And so I then also got stuck on the waiting list for CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so I was told that would take 6 to 12 weeks before you'd kind of really get anywhere, get to even speak to anyone or see anyone on that. I think it was around that kind of time. And so I at least started taking the meds, but I kind of decided, well, I can't wait 6 to 12 weeks feeling like this, because there's a truth to the idea, and I don't want to get this too downbeat, but I also want to be honest with you guys, because it would be a disservice to this stuff. If we're going to talk honestly about mental health, let's talk fucking honestly about it. So I didn't want to live during a lot of that, and suicide it's not about wanting to die. It's just that if this was life, if this constant battle of shit where I live was everything, then I don't want it anymore. I want that strong. In my head, that's what I would say. And I just couldn't bear it. And so I think about that. But, if I was going to get help and there was something here that I could do, then, God, I would go and try and do that. And so I went and bought every CBT book for depression I could get my hands on. And started working through that because, fuck, I wasn't waiting 6 to 12 weeks if there was something I could do now. And so I voraciously read everything I could find. Interestingly, probably the best one I read on it was the For Dummies book series, which actually I think is really good at most stuff. So Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Depression for Dummies gets a hat tip from me there. And so the citalopram, and then I'll come back to the CBT stuff. The citalopram I found the first week kind of okay, didn't really feel anything. About 5-6 days in, I started getting this weird, like, physical twitchy shit, right? And physical twitchy shit wasn't like mental anxiousness, which was what I was having before. It was like something was in my skin, it was moving around, and I couldn't seem to control it. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I was supposed to go to work for clients on a Saturday morning 1 week later, and I had to cancel because I was like, I don't know what this is. It was like something was in my skin and crawling around. And I went for a walk, and I remember laying down with this wall outside, like, what the fuck is this? And apparently that's quite normal. That's one of the pretty normal side effects that you get early on, and then you kind of level out. And I used to get it for the first about an hour or so after I'd taken my meds, and I used to take them in the morning, so I changed to taking them at night, just before bed, so that at least that restlessness part would be while I slept. Also found that my sleep started getting a bit worse, but I mean, that's hard to separate out from the fact that I was not in a great place either. So is that just because of the citalopram, or was that everything else going on in my life that made it hard to sleep? I couldn't tell you. I'd be speculating at best. So that kind of leveled out. I spoke to my doctor about it. They said that's kind of normal, keep at it. Okay, great. So the CBT stuff, if you've not done cognitive behavioral therapy, it's based on the idea that the way that we feel, the way that I feel, varies depending on how I interpret a situation. It gets based on a thing called Hebbian law, which is known in most industries as neurons that fire together, wire together. So I have a stimulus and I have a response. But here's an interesting one for you. There are no situations that have an inherent reaction to them. And what I mean by that is, if we think of the most abhorrent ideas that most of us can think of, we think of genocide, we think of paedophilia, we think of these things that most of us kind of recoil at slightly. Well, not only do I have to accept that they're not really uncommon, they happen quite regularly throughout, certainly genocide throughout human history happens all the time. And paedophilia, we have to face facts, that happens. It happens a lot. And so not only then must it be said that people think these are bad, some people must actually think that these are good things to happen. So if the most abhorrent ideas that I can think of don't inherently have this reaction to them, then surely I have to accept that perhaps no thing by itself has an inherent reaction to it. And if that's true, then it always comes down to my interpretation. So, what if my interpretation of events is mentally fucking myself? What do I do then? Well, this is where cognitive behavioral therapy comes in. We try and rewire a different learned response, because it's very rare that we stop and question whether our reactions emotionally to something are fair. How often do you do that? Do you go, oh, this isn't normal? We just go, no, that makes me angry, no, that makes me sad, no, that makes me jealous, no, that makes me paranoid, whatever. And we have that feeling and then we move on from it. CBT asks you to question that. So here's how it works for general depression, is you have to write down every time you have what we call a negative automatic thought, right, or a NAT. So anything negative that just jumps into your head out of nowhere. Okay, no one controls these. They can be, God, I hope I don't jump off this balcony. Or I use the example frequently for a lot of people. You ever see a small kid changing in the changing rooms? You're like, oh crap, I just stared at its penis, someone's going to think I'm a pedo. Oh crap, right? And you think that, and you forget it 30 seconds later, because it doesn't mean all that much to you. It could be, I hope my partner doesn't cheat on me. It could be, I hope my parents don't die. It could be anything, to be honest with you. But we all have these thoughts, NATs, negative automatic thoughts. And so you write down where you are when you have them. Kitchen, alone, 8:30, whatever it happens to be. You then write down the feelings that you're having in regards to where you are. So paranoid, scared, anxious, jealous, whatever. And you rank them out of 10. 10 being the worst, 1 being is nothing. So 1 would be akin to being asleep. You really wouldn't notice it or write anything down. 10 would be mentally eaten by tigers. Okay, so that's not great. You then write down some of the interesting stuff. What are the exact thoughts that you're having that lead you to that feeling? So for me, well, when we get into exactly what I have, and I might split this into 2 videos when we get to that bit, because it will make more sense as to exactly what my thoughts were, and I'll tell you exactly what they were, but I'll tell you when we get to how I found out I have obsessive compulsive disorder and what that is, why it's a little different than general depression. But you'd write down the exact thoughts that you'd have, like, I thought, I saw a small child changing, therefore I'm likely to be a paedophile, and right, whatever it happens to be. And you rank how strongly out of 10 you believe those thoughts. Okay, 10 out of 10, I completely believe those. They are facts to me. Then the fun part. You then have to write down whether that would stand up in a court of law. Okay, so if you were to present this as evidence, your thoughts as evidence, the evidence you have for having those thoughts to a jury of your peers, what evidence would you have? Because just having a thought actually it's not evidence, is it, right? Like, Your Honor, I knew that person was going to kill that guy. How'd you know it? I just did. That doesn't count, Charlie, unless you're a Jedi or a wizard. Those aren't reasons. So you need more than a thought. So what are you basing that assumption on? And often, there's fuck all. It's like, it's a Tuesday at 3 p.m. and I thought it, therefore it's true, right? And so you then have to go, what are the errors in thought and reasoning and logic that I make to go from this evidence or lack of evidence to the thoughts that I'm having? Okay, so emotional reasoning would would be a big one for me. I felt something, therefore it must be true. Black and white thinking, it's either good or it's bad. It's either a perfect thing or it's an imperfect thing. I either did it 100% bueno or it was fucking shite, right? There's no in between, and that's a flaw too, right? It's very rarely life. There's a whole raft of these ones that you'll see coming up time and again. For me, a big one was catastrophization. I would only ever imagine the worst possible scenario in a situation, and I'd play that over and over in my head. It would discount the positive, right? So any positive evidence that would go against my hypothesis of shitness that I saw the world as, just, that doesn't count. I'll forget that. It's the same, and we all do that a bit, right? If 10 people tell you they like what you're wearing, or, oh, you're looking leaner, and what have you, but one dude says, you're looking a bit small, right? You forget the 10 dudes, you're like, what, I'm fucking small now? Right? And you'll obsess about that one. So it's kind of normal behavior, and we can talk about why that is as well, when we get onto the OCD stuff. And interestingly, that leads into the solution, as I hope you'll see when you get there. But so you go with, okay, these are the thought errors that I've got. And then you try and go, what would be a rational alternative thought to the NAT, right? NAT, negative automatic. RAT, rational alternative thought based off of the evidence. What is a more appropriate thing to think based off of what's happened? Because remember, our feelings about something have to go through our interpretation, because there are no inherent things that cause us necessarily by themselves to feel a certain way. So you're trying to rewire a different thought, which will eventually lead to a different feeling. And that takes a lot of time. You've got to repeat that. It's a bit like, you can write your name with your dominant hand. Most of us, that's going to be our right hand. But if I try and write with my left, I have the same software, I have the same musculature down this left-hand side, but the neurological pathway, the neurons that need to fire together and then wire together, aren't as well connected on this side, and that will take quite a lot of practice before they become as fluid as I can write, hopefully, with my right hand, unless I'm hammered or something, right? And your thoughts are no different than that process. Your brain is plastic, it has plasticity, and that just means it can change over time. It isn't set in stone. You and everything in there are not set in stone. There are some basic things that are there, and there are common ways in which the brain expresses itself, and there are mechanisms at play that are true for the human condition. But the precise complicated array in which your brain knits itself together and gives rise to your consciousness, gives rise to your experience, is biblically nuanced. If you're going to have billions and billions of neurons in there, and the potentially trillions of connections that they can make with each other, well, fuck, isn't it not surprising that mental health can be nuanced? And I think that's something we sometimes miss. So when I'm trying to reprogram a rational alternative thought, I also have to go, it's going to take some time for me to get there. Okay, so that's basic CBT for depression. I'm going to cut this one there that's the intro to this, and I'll try and get through the next one. I know this can be a little long, but I don't want to do it a disservice, and some of you, if you've made it this far, that probably tells me something too. And if you've made it this far and you're this interested in what I'm saying, and you want to speak to someone quietly and privately, message me. I know how lonely it feels. I know how isolating it can feel, how embarrassing it can feel. And I have to tell you, you really shouldn't. I hope to God you shouldn't. It fucking sucks. And you shouldn't have to face that by yourself. You don't have to face that by yourself. You have nothing to be embarrassed about. Share it. And hopefully we can help you find yourself again. Find a life that you want again. Because you should. Because it's a problem when it ruins your life. I know what that's like. Okay, the next one, we'll talk about my specific OCD, and then maybe how that kind of relates to you guys. And maybe even then how it relates to coaching and eating disorders, addictive behavior, and things like that. And then really how you get over that.